Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. December 6, 1981. Interview with Mr. Muzaffer Feirouz in Paris. If we could begin by asking you to give us your reflections on the evacuation of Russian troops from Iran and your own role in this important event.
Well, the question of the evacuation of the Russian troops from Iran after the Second World War is a question which, unfortunately, is not very well known by our younger generations, because the history of this period has been deliberately, I repeat, deliberately falsified in order to fool the people of Iran and to present history under some other color. When Qawam al-Sultanate, after several Iranian governments had come and gone and the Soviet had refused to evacuate, pretending that Iran was a fascist center and was constituted a danger. Finally, at that time I had a newspaper in Iran and a daily newspaper. And I think perhaps it was for the first time in Iran there was a sort of a referendum organized by a newspaper. I sent about 25,000 small papers asking questions from people in the ministries, from people who could read and write anyway and who understood the situation, asking them, under the present situation, who, in your opinion, should come over and take over the reins of government and try to solve this very vital question which threatens our independence and our national integrity. Anyway, I sent all these documents, I distributed them. Finally, we had about, if I remember correctly, something like 18,000 replies at that time. And I think, roughly speaking, the majority was in the name of Qawam al-Sultanate, with my own uncle, the Dr. Musaddiq, second with about 400 to 500 votes less than Qawam. Of course, Qawam al-Sultanate was an older man and who had at that time had a great deal of experience. He'd been several times Prime Minister. And obviously, perhaps for this reason, at that time of Iranian history, the majority of people, of intellectuals anyway, preferred a man with more government experience, who at the same time was a patriot, and he proved it so during his tenure of office. And the name of Qawam came. So we, in our paper, we proclaimed the result of the referendum. And there was about a month and a half or 2 months left for Parliament to say, because at that time the Parliament gave what the Iranians call a tamayul, which of course means their sentiments to who should be invited to form a government. The Shah at that time had not arrived at the position where he nominated who he wanted to. But, and the Parliament was discussing the question, and there was a tremendous amount of intrigues going on to prevent Qawam being elected. And anyway, the basis of those intrigues at that time, from what we understood, came from the British Embassy, which did not want, in reality, the Russians to leave. Why? Because British policy was based on the old imperialist conception of a division into two spheres of influence, as they had done in the 1907 agreement with the Tsarist government, and they hoped they would be able to renew the same procedure after the Second World War. In reality, the plan for Iran was what happened in Vietnam, in Korea. The north of Iran, the south of Iran, the North Korea, the South Korea, the North Vietnam, the South Vietnam, all north and south. The north being under the protection and influence of one bloc, and the south under the protection and influence of the other bloc. At that time, American diplomacy in Iran was really playing a very second role, following the British line, because they had very little experience. It was just after the Second World War, a year after, 2 years after, and it was the beginning of their experience. And we must say, rather unfortunate experiences time has proved since the Second World War in their diplomatic relations in all parts of the world, from the very far east of Chiang Kai-shek, starting from there, it will now have come to the other countries of the Far East, like the Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. They all, in everywhere, they had one objective, and everywhere the contrary to their objective arrived, as events have proved. So, unfortunately, the time has shown that nobody seems to appreciate in America that at least one should learn from one's own experience. What is wrong with? There must be something wrong that this situation is such. Well, anyway, in about 2 years before the revolution, I wrote a long memorandum to President Carter. And I explained, I believed in Carter's personal integrity. I think he meant well. I considered him weak. I considered him to be under the influence of Brzezinski, who was his counselor, who was more Polish than American, and wanted at all costs, even at the cost of another third World War, to try to bring about an independent Poland, whatever happens. And I wrote a long memorandum for Carter, explaining to him the situation in Iran, a very critical memorandum, and explained to him that the policy they're pursuing, they're preparing the ground for a very big revolution, which will be inevitable in Iran if they do not change policies, they do not do away with the system they have of thinking under world conditions today. A country such as Iran can be directed with people who are completely pawns in their own hands, without any personality, without any nationality, simply obeying as they shouted. That was my conception, which I wrote to Carter. And as a matter of fact, I said to him, I imagined that I proposed him two things, which he did immediately. I must express my gratification, which I did by letter to him afterwards. I asked him to do two things, to clear his mind. I said, send about 10 or 15 people of your personal friends, but people who have not been responsible in forming policy in Iran during the last 10, 15 years. But we know the situation of the world. Will you send them there, tell them to see the dossiers, to see people, to talk, and come back to you to give an objective report of the situation in Iran? Secondly, I asked Scott I said that I cannot accuse my own compatriots, Iranians, unfortunately, of being corrupt and of being pillaging the country. But I said, relations which existed between Nixon, Kissinger, Helms, especially, and the Shah were not the normal relations existing between a chief of state and another chief of state in other countries. And I think American interests dictate that a special commission should be formed to investigate what these relations were. And perhaps some good will come out which will clear up certain mysteries. And I think there are many Iranian patriots who would be prepared to send people who will witness such a commission and help, because it's on this basis only of good relations that the future is possible between the people of Iran and the people of the United States. Well, he sent, as far as the reports I had, he sent an aeroplane of about 10 or 15 people to Iran about 10 days afterwards, without Sullivan even being informed. And I heard, I don't know whether it's true, that Sullivan was surprised who were these people who arrived suddenly without his information, and he took a plane and went to Washington to see what it's all about. But I think instructions had been given to the CIA to present these people with all the dossiers they need, and they could meet people they considered useful, they should meet, to get them an idea of what was going on in Iran. And that's what happened. They stayed, I think, about 10, 15 days, and they gave a long report.
What type of people were these?
They were personal friends of his. They're personal friends of Carter, yes. I have not got the names, but I know they about between 10 and 12. I was not surprised, apparently. I sent a copy of my letter to Ambassador Young, in whom I have never met him, I don't think about him, but by his action, I saw he understood more what was happening in the third world than any of the other diplomats who were in. He was ambassador to the United Nations with a letter. And I knew he was a friend of Carter, and in fact I imagined that probably the election of Carter was due to him, who helped getting the black vote in America for Carter at that time. And I do know that he wrote me a very nice letter, and I do know that he had been impressed by this document I sent, because he wrote me a very warm letter, but he started giving interviews, talking about Khomeini being a saint and this sort of thing, And they asked him, what are you talking about? You're an ambassador to the United Nations. This is not your affair. At this point, he had been impressed, I think, and he saw the danger for the United States if the same conditions continued in Iran. Anyway, the Helms' dossier, I said to him, Helms, he already has a dossier for perjury. I request you to send this dossier until the question of his presence in Iran, what he did there, can come under consideration. And he sent that immediately. And Helms was convicted for 2 years prison. Of course, prison without what they say. What is the exact term? I don't know in English. I forget. تعلیقی که ما میگیم, which is he'll get it if he has another crime and is convicted. Well, the 2 years will be added. You see, he was convicted for 2 years of prison, And the judge, in convicting him, said that you are the symbol of shame for America. It was all in the press, in the documents. It was all right. Well, and I remember that in the documents, which I wrote to Carter, I said to him, I said, the government must be well informed. Well, you have what you call the Central Intelligence Agency. I said, you know, Mr. President, I imagine if historians want one day to write the history of this period of the world in which we are living, they'll find it difficult to write the Central Intelligence Agency. They might be tempted to write the communist-inspired agency. Because the results, the people judge by results. The results of the policies as a result of information given by what you call the CIA. Since the Second World War up to this date, everywhere has shown that you've got the opposite results to what you expected. And now I said that you're doing exactly the same thing in Iran, preparing a ground for revolution, and the only possible solution of such a revolution, I said, if you want to stop this, is to finish with the present regime as soon as you can, and to proclaim that the independence of Iran, the national sovereignty of the Iranian people, is a vital American interest. That's the only interest on which a real American interest can be preserved in Iran and in the world which we live in today. The question of domination is part of an epoch which is finished. But the sooner this is realized, the better. That was really the conception of what I wrote to Carter at that time. And well, events proved that exactly what I wrote to him 2 years before, exactly that happened as far as Iran was concerned. So unfortunately, we are now in front of, I've said this, which is not part of your question about the Azerbaijan, but I think it was necessary to say that, to go back to the Azerbaijan question and the evacuation of Russian troops, and even at that time, the British were against the election of Qawam. It was with great difficulty. Certain manipulations with deputies, this, that, and the other, which only Qawam himself knows, and perhaps I know, I'm in the secret at that time, but we managed, in spite of all the intrigues, Qawam got the majority in the parliament by 2 votes. So the Shah was obliged to call for Qawam. It was that moment that Qawam Sultaneh asked me whether I'd like to collaborate with him. I said it would be an honor for me, but that I had certain conditions which I thought was necessary for accepting responsibilities and participating. He said, what are those conditions? I said that we must show that we are in Iran, we and you are in favor of profound social reforms. And what has been completely neglected during all these years, and that, the basis of that, is that the Ministry of Labor, with a minimum salary for Iranian workers, should be put into operation by us, in spite of the crisis, in spite of all the situation, to show that we mean business as soon as possible. He said, all right, fine. And he asked me to become vice prime minister, and at the same time to form the new ministry, Minister of Labor, and propaganda, which I accepted. Well, before he formed the government, he asked me, he said, I want to ask you a particular service. He said, I want you in person to discuss with the Soviet the conditions of their retreating from Iran and to evacuating the soil of Iran from all their troops and these arms which they have actually in place, and which under our agreement made during the war they should have left when the Americans and the English left, under the same agreement. I said, all right. But he said this must be completely secret. Nobody should know, not even in the Council of Ministers. The question must not be discussed. And when everything is finished, then we will present the case, but not before. And nobody should be in the secret. That's all right. He said, the only thing I ask you is to, possible to send a card for the Russian representative here. I said, I'm afraid I can't. Oh, he said, you're always like this, you're like this, but we're under their bayonets, they're occupying their troops. But I said, it's a better reason to be able to preserve our dignity. We have nothing but dignity to preserve. We have no independence, we're under foreign occupation. At least we must show that we're capable of preserving our dignity. I have no objection, but under the protocol, it's he who should come and leave a card for me. It's he who has affairs with me. It's he who's accredited to our government. So when he gives the card, with great pleasure, I will of course return with my card. I said, so he saw it was useless, and he said that, so he sent one of a person who he knew was closely perhaps connected with those people, asking them to send a card for me, which they immediately did. It was part of their protocol. We should have done. But he wanted to be particularly nice to say the person who wants to discuss with you was given a card. But of course, for the reasons of protocol and dignity, I didn't accept. And they left their card, and I returned the card. And that was where the relations started between me and the Russian representative there. At that time, who started the discussions with me. Well, we had discussions. I always met them and had this long talks, secret talks, they have it in team. And talks continued. After about 10 or 15 days, our representative, because the Iranian question was the first question which was before the Security Council of the United Nations, which had, of course, after the war been newly formed in New York. And our representative there was Allah, an old Anglophile, and a courtisan, as we might call him, courtier, but which provoked an incident. I was talking in Tehran directly, expressing our friendship with the Soviet Union, that we have 2,500 kilometers of frontiers, which condemns us and you to live on mutually good relations, friendly relations, but these mutual relations must be based on the respect, mutual respect of our dignity, our security, and our independence. And for this reason, we want you to retire your troops, because it's very difficult for this government to accept, to continue, if we remain under foreign occupation. This moment when I was talking on this basis of friendship and so on, which was the reality of the situation and my own personal political beliefs, we must have good relations and keep the balance between the two great powers that exist in order to preserve our independence. Well, this moment, suddenly there was a violent incident in New York. Allard, I don't know, in a rather offensive and critical way, spoke with against the Soviet Union's representative, who was Gromyko, as a matter of fact, at that time. And he got up from the table, clacked on the table with his fist, went out and clacked the pot. The door, I'm sorry.
This Gromyko.
Gromyko. This incident, suddenly the news came when I was talking with the Soviet representative on this basis.
Did Allah do this on his own? Was it the evidence? He
was the Shah's hand, the British intrigue. He had no, I'll show you a copy of a telegram. It's interesting for you. Anyway, of course it made a fool of us. We were talking in this way with the Russian representative. The fellow came in. I was furious. The fellow came and see me and he said, what is this game? Is it a game you're playing with us? I said, no. I said, you're perfectly justified. You're perfectly right. He's our representative, but he had no instructions from us to even open his mouth because we're talking with you here. And I will see what can be done. Of course, I was in favor of immediately kicking him out. See? Because the question was vital interest for Iran. I talked to Qawam. I said, look here, we must... Qawam was rather in this matter a little conservative, and he said, well, it's difficult now to kick him out exactly. But I think he's done it without anything. But he said, prepare it. I said, well, we've sent a very, very strong telegram. He said, all right, prepare it. Write it, show it to me, and I'll see if that's small things I'll make, and we'll send a strong telegram. I said, all right. I prepared the telegram, and I gave the telegram. I showed it to Qawam. He changed it a little bit, made it a little milder than what I'd... But it was still very, very strong, which anybody with any respect for his own honor would have himself resigned at that moment. You see. But the telegram was sent. And I gave instructions on the radio. Officially, it was said that this incident is absolutely without any instructions from the government. Allah has made certain statements, and he has been called to order for this reason, you see. But I have the text of the telegram, which Qawam in his own handwriting, he copied and he made certain things. And I have that telegram, which is very interesting. It's a historical document at the moment. Well, the Russians, of course, got to know what we said in the radios and so on, that we were not playing a double game with them. But still, of course, the negotiations dragged on till finally, after another 10 or 15 days, I finally summoned the Soviet representative to come and see me. And I said to him, look here, we are talking many weeks. I've shown the best of my goodwill of the Iranian people towards you. I have not seen the same reciprocity. And I've asked you to come tonight. It was 10 o'clock, I asked him to come. To send a telegram of what I want to tell you tonight, direct to General Stalin. When I mentioned the word Stalin, he jumped from his thing because he was surprised. But he said, no, Molotov is... I said, yes, but what I'm going to say is very grave. And I would prefer to go direct to Stalin. Anyway, he said, all right, what is it? I said, well, look here. We've shown our goodwill. We can't do more. We've not got the means to act in a military way against a great power like you. And we don't want to. It's not our interest, and we can't do it. The only thing a government which respects itself can do is if it sees it's not possible for it to carry out what it hoped to be able to carry out with very good will towards your great country, then to resign. And that's what we have decided to do. That's the reason why I wanted you to telegraph to General Stalin that if within a very short time Russian troops still remain in Tehran, in Iran, the north of Iran, well, the government will have to resign. But as I told you, our policy is based on friendship towards you, and it's respecting the same principle which I've told you during our conversations, that I want to tell you now, that when we resign, we have to give a proclamation to the people. Oh, they will want to know why we resign. Well, I must tell you, respecting the friendship I've talked to you about, and which is sincere, to prove the sincerity of this friendship, that we shall be obliged to explain the reason. And that reason will be that our experience shows that the Soviet policy today no longer respects the Leninist conception of the respect for independence and the national sovereignty of other peoples. So on this basis, we're obliged to resign. And we can do nothing else, but by conscience we cannot continue to keep the country in this state. He took the notes, he went. Well, 2 nights afterwards he telephoned me. Can I see you? I said, of course. And it was about the same time he came. And he said that, when he came, he said, telegram from General Stalin. And he sat down, very quiet, very tranquil. I was very pleased. And he said, well, we have received a telegram. I'm instructed to come and tell you that after 25 days, something like that, about roughly 25 days, there will not be one Soviet soldier or with arms in Iran.
This is before Qawam's trip to Moscow.
No, he'd gone and come back. A month and a half afterwards.
I see.
Oh yes, Moscow did nothing at all about the. No. It was a month and a half, 2 months afterwards. This affair, after all these negotiations, the Alloy incident and all that. You see, this camp.
So this is in April, just before
before
proclamation, the
exactly.
proclamation.
Exactly. Anyway, the proclamation we made when he came, and we had news, of course. We had news, and it's here which I want to express the gratitude, which really represents the gratitude of the Iranian people towards Trygve, who was the first Secretary General of the United Nations, who was sending messages for us. He was doing his best there to arrange this conflict. And he, of course, he could see who, he saw Allah. And he sent messages. And he said that to us that I'm sending messages. I hope these messages through an ambassador, foreign ambassador who arrived, as a matter of fact, in Tehran. He said, tell Qawam that I'm sending messages through Allah. I hope they all receive. We had no messages from Allah. And we had no messages from Allah. So finally, when he resigned and went and wrote a book in the service of peace, which I've quoted in my book, he talks about Allah. He said, I saw this man, I'm sending messages which were secret to send to his government. I don't know whether he sent them or not, but what I do know is that the same day that I spoke to him secretly, after he was in the Department of State, telling them exactly what I'd been talking about. That was the the concrete result of this man's, what was his name, I forget the Secretary General, first Secretary General of United Nations, who was really sincere in trying to find a pacific solution to this. You see. And Anyway, when the Russians came and they gave this, I asked them that they confirm it by writing the next day, but I didn't wait because we had information that the British at that time had brought troops to Basra. And they were waiting, they wanted to come in with troops, saying the Russians are there, so we've come in. It would have been de facto, automatically, the division of Iran. Because if the British came, they wouldn't have gone. Nobody would speak to say anything. They would just stay there, that's all. So, as the French say, je suis, je reste. Nobody would leave. They're all there. Exactly the same thing in Korea, or in Vietnam, and the sort of thing that happened. But the same policy, the same plan at that time. Well, that was as far as the thing they left. I must say that the Russian, after the 25th, 6th day, they found a limit of everything. They was scrupulously observed their commitment, and it was the only country which they left on their own, by their own will. They stayed after the war. They stayed in Austria for 14 years before they arranged a treaty there of neutrality and so on, before they withdrew their troops.
What was the role of the so-called Truman ultimatum?
It was a lot of talk. The Russians didn't care a damn about the Truman ultimatum. There's no importance. But Truman wasn't an ultimatum. He was speaking, why don't they leave? It was just to keep sort of but the Americans, as I told you at the beginning of this talk, in reality, their game was absolutely to follow the British line. And the British line was, and we have further reasons, further proofs of that, is that they had their troops in Basra. They wanted to come in, as I told you, and they had started to make intrigues in the south of Iran, where, with the Bakhtiari tribes, Bakhtiari and the Qashqai, but particularly the Bakhtiari, they wanted to proclaim in Isfahan the independence, just like Azerbaijan, you see, of the south. It was the same game. So when the Russians came, I didn't wait for their right. I saw with the question of ours, somebody they make us information, they suddenly set the frontier, they made us come in. It would have been, in fact, the division of Iran, you see. I gave instructions that the radio should immediately, the news should be distributed everywhere, that the Russians have come and they've given, saying they're leaving, the affair is settled, and so on. We received the next morning anyway, but before we received, the news had been given out that the affair had been settled. And they scrupulously observed and respected their obligation. That was as far as the withdrawal of the Russian troops. But the Azerbaijan affair and the question of the southern rising against the government to prepare there also was also of great interest at that time, because with my own personal idea, and Qawam approved it, I nominated, with Qawam's approval, for the Bakhtiari tribe 2 Bakhtiari people. See, one was the son of Murtaza Qoli Khan, who was the his name I forget his name now, the oldest son of Murtaza Qoli Khan, and another Bakhtiari who was Abul Qasim Khan. I sent for them and they came. John Shahbut, John Shah, the son of Murtaza Qoli Khan and Abul Qasim. I sent for them and I talked to them. I said, okay, I want the Bakhtiari to nominate 2 of you Bakhtiari as governor of the Bakhtiari tribe. It was the first time something happened like that in Iran. I said, up to now, you've always been running around foreigners to preserve, thinking you preserve your dignity, you'll do this, that, and the other. But all you must want from your own government. Why us foreigners? They were very pleased. John Shaw said, of course. I said, you have nothing. Your relations there, all right. You have the British consul is in Isfahan. You have the ordinary normal relations. If there's any question of the thing, normal relations. But you have nothing to run after him about. Concerning the Bakhtiyari affair, you're representing now the government. I'm giving you dignity. When I said that, John Shaw said, but if I get hold of this man, I'll cut his neck. I said, we don't want that either.
Which man?
The consul, British consul.
Trott.
Not Trott, no, he was in Ahvaz at that time. Gold, yes. Gold, he was in Isfahan at that time, yes. I said, we don't want that either. So I'm asking you to respect your dignity, your country's dignity, when you're carrying out duty which forms part of the government. That's why I'm giving you this. We want to encourage you to change your ways, the Bakhtiaris. Anyway, they went, and from the very first week, the meetings started between them. And I even have letters of Gold written in Persian. He spoke Persian, but in a funny Persian, you see. Which he sent to these people. We have a meeting, this, that, that sort of document.
With Bakhtiaris.
With Bakhtiaris, yes. And the Rashidian people at that time as well. Astollah Bud or Saifullah Bud. But the father was, of course, the old fox there was the father. You see, who based the whole relations and so on. And it's very amusing about the father. And the investigations. Anyway, when this was going on, we got the reports. Abul Qasim sent us regularly all reports. He was in there, and he was sincere towards me. We got all the reports, exactly what's happening, any documents he could find, he would send, and he was himself in the meetings. And Qawam said, "This is your affair. You must go to Isfahan."
This is in September 1946.
46. You know the dates better than me.
Well, that worked out.
Yes, exactly. And anyway, I had formed, as you know, with Qawam, the Iranian Democratic Party at that time, with a progressive program of reform, which was to be, in my opinion, a solid party, a national party of reform. You see, not to leave the space any open to other people to put their foot in it, showing that we have a party, we want to make reforms, this, that, and the other. And as a pretext to open the section of the Iranian Democratic Party in Isfahan, I said to Qawam, all right, I will go to Isfahan to see what can be done. Anyway, there was a colonel of the gendarmerie who had my confidence. I wrote out a special order in an envelope, sealed it, gave it to him. I said, you go to Isfahan. When I come, my plane arrives, you'll come to the aerodrome. You'll open this document after my arrival in the aerodrome, and you'll carry out the instructions in it. You have no right to open it before. All right. He went. Well, we went. The Iranian Democratic Party representatives were there. People were there. There was the general, the head of the army there. Was there also the General Mu'tazidi, who had very good relations with my family. His father and everybody, we know him very well. I informed him that I'm coming to see, I'll come into your house. I didn't want to go to the governor's house. The governor was old Anglophile who I knew very well. But when I went at 6 or 7 years old, I went to England. I was at Harrow and Cambridge, you know. And he was there. Nice fellow, as a matter of fact. But he was governor. Now there are Araste. But he was an old Anglophile, you know. I knew that. And wanted to, I knew there was probably some troubles and so on, so I wanted to go to the General House. They were all there, of course, at the aerodrome. And when I arrived, and including John Shaw, who I saw there were about 20 or 30 Bakhtiyari horsemen, you know, things about a couple of 100 yards the other way, about with waiting. They'd come, I think, with John Shaw to the aerodrome. They all got down. I said, everybody was very nice and so on. John Shaw, everybody came along, and we got down, and Motazidi was there, the General Motazidi, and I was accompanied by all these people to the car, which I wanted to get into and go to Motazidi's house. And, the colonel who'd got there, he was there, of course, and he, by a sign, he said he knew, he'd opened and he knew what was out. So when I was saying goodbye to everybody, I said to John Shaw, well, you have perhaps a little discussion with the colonel and so on. We'll see everybody later and so on. I got in the Motazidi's car and went. And when I left, the gendarmerie colonel put John Shaw in the jeep and took him to prison immediately. And it remained his father, Murtaza Ghuli Khan. Now, Murtaza Ghuli Khan was so connected to that all those years, of course, with the British and so on, that even Reza Khan didn't dare touch him. During all this period of Reza Khan, the Reza Buzorg, as they call him in Iran, he didn't dare touch Murtaza Ghuli Khan. Well, they gave me 2 guides. I sent a few gendarmes up 2,500 meters in the mountains, and they arrested him at midnight, and they brought him to Isfahan, Murtaza Ghuli Khan, from there. And I immediately proclaimed military government in Isfahan. I proclaimed General Motazidi as the military governor. I had to do that. Anything could happen. You see, everything had been prepared. We had to act immediately. Of course, in my absence, intrigues were going on in Tehran, and one or two of the ministers in the cabinet, because when I gave this proclamation, I proclaimed that we order the proclamation of the military law rule in martial law in Isfahan, and I proclaimed General Motazidi as the Governor General. Anyway, it was proclaimed, it was executed immediately, and everything calmed down. Because at midnight they brought him there, and I wanted to send to Tehran. He sent me a message not to send him by plane because of his heart and so on. I see, send him by car if possible to Tehran. I said, all right, well, tell him, we were, for instance, Monday, I said, well, tell him, we'll send him Thursday. You see, 3 days later. But I gave instructions to be sent the next morning. Because I thought if they knew Thursday, they might be sent some back on the road or something. Anyway, they took him to Tehran. And the interesting part of all this is that the whole conception, of course, fell through. But the next morning, I was working in the office at the military governor's house. They came and said that Fedakar wants to see me. Fedakar was a deputy of Isfahan, a 2-day deputy. And I was working. He said, what do you want to see? I had something very urgent you want to see him. So I told him to come in. He came in and he said, what is all this business about the martial law about anyway? I said, who the hell are you talking to? I said, it doesn't concern you. What are you talking about? He said, well, we can't support this. I said, well, get out. I said, I get out immediately and shut your mouth, or you will follow the others who I've sent to prison. Get out, I said. And he went. I never heard any more about him. And that was the incident happened about Fidel Castro.
There were some rumors that he had been storing arms or something in Isfahan.
Well,
sort of a rebellion.
Well,
is that true?
But you know, many of the two-day people, my two-day people, it was quite normal, because in a sort of a party which begins a progressive program, always the contrary party tries to infiltrate to find out what's happening. My uncle, Dr. Mossadegh, was so convinced about this. There were in the two-day party, there were many sincere ideological people. I knew them who believed ideologically. Everybody has his opinion, which should be respected. But there were also lots of humbugs in there, you see, who were there on missions. And that's what I always told the two-day people in Tehran. I told them. I said that you think you're talking in your committee, central committee, you talk there and so on and so on. Nobody knows what's going on. I said, but you have British agents there amongst you. Oh, who? Tell us the names, so on. I said, I can't tell you the names, but there are British agents amongst you. But I can give you a receipt, a diagnostic, which you will find out who they are. I said, whoever, when you get together, your committee speaks against me, is a British agent. Now go and find out yourself who it is. I don't know.
But do you think they were actually preparing an uprising?
Well, if they were British, I don't know. See, because the two-day people know. The two-day people, no, I'll tell you exactly what happened, as a matter of fact. After this happened and I came out there, I stayed again and went back to Tehran, of course. In Tehran, there was quite a scene in the Council of Ministers. There was the two-day were in there. And they said, but why has this been done without the decree of the Council of Ministers? You see, they wanted to. Qawam was sitting. I said to the two-day people, I said, when I have a responsibility, my belief and conviction is that nothing else that the national interest of the country counts. If it gets at such a moment that for some bureaucratic reason, some act of vital importance should be delayed, I will not wait for that bureaucratic preparation, because I know that can be prepared immediately. I know that everybody and the person of the government I represent is favorable. That's the reply to your question. Qawam said what he has done is done on my behalf. You see, so I signed as on behalf of the Prime Minister, Fیروز. You see, there was this incident also in the Council of Ministers, which I replied to them. And that was the. Let's see. That was the.
Because Falakar's son, Iraj, has said that at that time his father and a group had stored some arms at the new factory, that they had thrown it in the river when you came. Before you came or after you came or something, you know. I'd like to know if this was true.
No. I'll tell you something. Amongst the two-day people, there were some who were really believed in the ideology, and amongst them also those who were with a certain amount of nationalist leanings as well, in spite of their ideology, which is international. Right. But there were others, and for me, all those who were, as we say, more Catholic than the Pope, you see. on certain questions were agents infiltrated. That was my own experience. Those who were very, very sort of more Catholic than the Pope, and trying to push along those things which they knew would probably provoke incidents and difficulties and so on. Well, it was done on the basis of a program. The whole trouble was that it was an organization which had been well organized. They had clean people in it, ideologically clean people, and they believed what they did. And my own opinion was, well, in Iran, it should be a democracy. We have 2,500 kilometers of frontier with the Soviet Union. It's the communist country. If we want to have a coexistence with those people, we can't pretend to be a democracy and to sort of shut the mouths of a very small minority of people who want to express their beliefs, these beliefs. And on the contrary, if we want to shut their mouths, it will make them more influential, you see. And the best way is to get them in, get them to come, and everybody should know exactly who stands for what. It's as simple as that. And I think that was the best policy that was pursued at that time. Because at that moment, you know, the entry of communist ministers in a Middle Eastern government was almost unthinkable.
How was that decided, to bring these people in?
Well, when Qawam, we discussed with Qawam this question about the reforms and this sort of thing, that trouble should not be made from the part of to their people. Qawam, I said, in my opinion, if we bring a couple of these people in and give them a sense of responsibility, they can't do anything. They're there. But we'll open their hands anyway. If it's empty, people will see. If it's full, people will see what's in there. People will see. We must be psychological in this shutting mouths and being brutal and this that. It's not policy, especially when we want to live on relations of mutual respect and independence with this.
Was there any Russian pressure?
No, absolutely.
To bring these people in?
They didn't even know. One of the Russian people came...
because I think Dr. Keshavarz has said that...
Keshavarz is one of those, I'm talking about these agents, is one of those who was amongst those agents. You understand what I mean? I told you, as my own personal opinion, was that because Keshavarz brought him in, he came in, all right. But even Rad Manesh, later years, he was, to me, he said, why didn't you bring me along in? He was clean. He was clean. Rad Manesh was one of those clean people, you know, he believed in... But I don't know. I said, I don't know. I was just two or three of the people in there didn't really mind who it was. And you're perhaps justified in what you say. I should have perhaps brought you in because you had more experience than the others. And I knew certainly that you were this keen. You understand what I mean? As far as your beliefs go. But anybody who has clean in his beliefs and is not a hypocrite or playing the double jeu, as we call it, or double game, say, all right, come along. And if the destiny of the world has to be the other way, all right, destiny is that, but the only way to preserve national independence when we have this 2,500 kilometers, I always said to Qawam, I said, look here, if the Russians bring a two-corps army and on the frontier, and not give them military orders, but just tell them to start urinating. What's going to happen in Iran? There's going to be inundations everywhere in Iran. We must exactly see where we stand, what we can do, and do that under the best possible auspices in the preservation of our own independence. And I got the justification of this in Azerbaijan. Why? Because, and nobody knows this, you see, very few people know it, of course. Of course, there were people who were present there, they knew it. In Azerbaijan, where I'd been there 2 or 3 days speaking with these people, suddenly I got Peshawari, who started talking about, wanted to make Zanjan, which was, as far as Azerbaijan, including Azerbaijan. So what the hell are you talking about? What are you talking about? I said, this is the document we've prepared. It's this or nothing. Sign here or nothing. I see. All right. I got very angry. I got up, and I took with me General Hedayat with me. to Tabriz. I took Muqaddam with me, who I nominated as military governor of Azerbaijan before I left Tabriz. I gave him the order. And a number of people with me in my suite. And they were all sitting there. I got up, I said, I can't refuse to listen to this nonsense any longer. Do you want me to give instructions immediately here and now to have you arrested? I had nothing. What do we have? He suddenly lost his color. My old friend, I got up, I said, go to hell, all of you. I went back to the place where had been prepared for me. I telephoned. I said, telephone to Russian consul, come and see me immediately. He came, he spoke Persian almost as well as you and I. He spoke Persian almost very well. And I said, I have business in Tehran, unfortunately, which forces me to go back much sooner than I expected. My own plane is coming here in 2 days, but at present I have no plane. And I've understood that there's an in-tourist plane in the aerodrome. Would you please give instructions that they list to me immediately? I'm leaving for Tehran 3 o'clock this afternoon. He said, what were you leaving for Tehran? I said, yes. But why? I said, what are these people you brought in this country, and do you think we're going to listen to all this nonsense? Who the hell are the things they're talking about? And to who they're talking? I said, we'll show what should be done. I'll show them what should be done when I get back. Please, I want a plane. Oh, no. He said, they must sign what you order. They must sign what you say. That the agreement was that, wasn't it? I said, I don't know. I've given the signature. I'm not waiting for anything. I want a plane. I don't want any signature. I want a plane. He left. After half an hour, Bishwari telephoned me. But there must be some misunderstanding somewhere. There must be some misunderstanding. We have done nothing to that you should upset you or to be against what you say. Will you permit us to come around immediately to see what it's all about? Well, they were back within half an hour. And the papers were all signed. This incident...
This is in June?
Yes, in 46. But this is this incident occurred in Tabriz. You see? In Tabriz, when I decided to leave immediately. And when we signed, I said to Peshawari, I said, the radio of Tabriz from 8 o'clock tonight must be put at my disposition. And tell them every hour they speak, they say have something important at 8 o'clock. Is that all right? At 8 o'clock, I went on radio Tabriz. Excuse me, I'll put this here for a moment. Yes, this was the next day after they signed everything. I gave them lunch for them. This was the lunch the next day. You see, I'm speaking to them.
Mr. Fairouz is showing me a booklet which is entitled "ایران در راه اصلاحات دموکراتیک
در تحت رهبری جناب آقای قوام سفیر
که در خرداد ماه 1125
چاپ شده. انتشارات اداره کل تبلیغات. This was all the reforms, all the decrees which we did at that time. You see, it's شورای عالی انتخابات, everything is
and your speech is in there.
And this speech concerning Azerbaijan, yes, is there, which I'll show you because it's interesting. From this Tabriz, از هموطنان امشب از شهر تبریز یعنی مهد ایران و مرکز جنبش‌های بزرگ آزادی خواهانه برای شما هموطنان عزیز صحبت می‌کنم. به طوری که می‌دانید غفلت و سوء سیاست دولت‌های گذشته و خیانت‌های پی در پی نمایندگان تحمیلی مجلس و بی‌اعتنایی به اجرای قوانین اساسی و حقوق حق مردم سبب شد که جمعی از فرزندان ستمدیده و غیور ایران به منظور دفاع از آزادی قیام نموده و تحولات اخیر آذربایجان را به وجود آوردند. محتاج به تذکر نیست که عمل عناصر ارتجاعی نزدیک بود خاک پاک ایران را تبدیل به میدان جنگ خانگی و خونریزی نموده و این مملکت و اهالی ستمدیده اون را بیش از پیش دچار بدبختی و ذلت نماید. در همون دقایق بحران آمیز که در نتیجه غفلت و بی‌علاقگی اولیای اموری یأس و ناامیدی سرتاسر مملکت را فرا گرفته بود، افکار عمومی متوجه جناب آقای قوام سلطنه سیاستمدار کهنسال و توانای ایران گردید و در نتیجه همون فشار افکار عمومی بوده است که علی‌رغم دسائس عمال ارتجاعی زمام امور کشور ایران به کف و با تدبیر این مرد وطن پرست سپرده شد. به مجرد زمامداری قوام سلطنه نگرانی‌های جنگ خانگی و برادرکشی برطرف شد. کم کم پریشانی افکار مبدل به امید گردید و موفقیت‌های پی در پی در سیاست‌های خارجی و داخلی و احراز شخصیت بین المللی سبب شد که نام آقای قوام سلطنه مشهور جهان گردد و این مرد کهنسال به مظفر ایرانیت و شرافت در افکار خودی و بیگانه شناخته شود. در نتیجه همین جریانات و موفقیت‌های پی در پی و اقدامات اصلاحی بوده که آقای قوام سلطنه مقام رهبری عموم آزادیخواهان ایران را احراز نمودند. و پس از حل اکثر مشکلات خارجی و داخلی یک موضوع باقی مونده و اون مشکل آذربایجان بوده است. در تعقیب مذاکراتی که در تهران با نمایندگان آذربایجان به عمل آمده بود، رئیس دولت این جانب را به اتفاق کمیسیون به آذربایجان اعزام داشت که در تحت تعلیمات عالی ایشون به مذاکرات با نمایندگان آذربایجان ادامه داده تا مسائل فیما بین به نفع آزادی و وحدت ملی ایران حل و تصفیه گردد. شنوندگان گرامی، به خوبی مستحضر هستند که مشکل آذربایجان از طرف عوامل مختلف ارتجاعی وسیله بود که دائما دسیسه نموده و در میان افکار عمومی به منظور ایجاد تشویش و نگرانی سمپاشی نمایند. متاسفانه این عناصر ارتجاعی و خیانتکار به سمپاشی داخلی اکتفا ننموده، بلکه می‌خواستند موضوع آذربایجان را داخل در دایره سیاست بین المللی نموده و بدین وسیله بیگانگان را برخلاف اصل استقلال ایران دعوت به مداخله در امور ما بنمایند. حسن تدبیر و اراده قوی رئیس دولت و همچنین حسن نیت و وطن پرستی نمایندگان آذربایجان، مخصوصا آقای پیشوری، مجبور اینجا به ترجمهش بکنیم، سبب شد که با حل این مشکل به نفع آزادی و وحدت ملی ایران آخرین امید عناصر ارتجاعی قصد داشتند وسیله خلط مپس موضوع آذربایجان را پیرهن عثمان کرده و با دعوت به مداخلات بیگانه ضربت به استقلال ایران وارد سازند مبدل به یأس شود. در این موقع این نکته را نباید از نظر دور داشت. کسانی که خواهان برادرکشی بوده و تا دیروز حل مسئله آذربایجان را با تبلیغات ارتجاعی به وسیله استعمال زور راه منحصر به فرد معرفی می‌نمودند، امروز در پیشگاه افکار عمومی به ملت ایران رسوا شده و ثابت و مسلم گردید که حسن نیت و اتخاذ تدابیر حسنه بهترین وسیله حل معضلات و مشکلات به شمار می‌رود. به طوری که با توجه به مفاد موافقتنامه ملازم می‌گردد، اصول خود مختاری و حکومت ملی در آذربایجان تبدیل به انجمن ایالتی و ولایتی و نصب استاندار و تعیین رؤسای ادارات گردیده است و سیاست مدبرانه و مسالمت آمیز جناب آقای قوام سلطنه که منجر به اخذ این نتیجه برجسته گردید کاملا در پیشگاه ملت ایران تایید شده است. بالاخره در نتیجه مذاکرات پی در پی شبانه روزی این چند روز، اخیراً امشب در ساعت 7:30 موافقتنامه‌ای با نمایندگان آذربایجان امضا و مبادله گردید و این مشکل مهم در نهایت صمیمیت و صداقت به نفع ایران و وحدت ملی ایران حل و تصفیه شده است. ملت ایران همیشه به افراد غیور و با شهامت آذربایجانی خود افتخار داشته و امشب با نهایت مسرت از این شهر تبریز، یعنی سنگر آزادی خواهان ایران، این مژده مهم و بزرگ را به استحضار هموطنان عزیز میرسانم. حال با حل این مشکل باید دانست که فردا میان آزادی خواهان ایران دیگر موجبی برای جدایی نخواهد بود و عناصر ارتجاعی نیز باید بداند که دولت جناب آقای قوام سلطنه به اتکای این نیروی با عظمت و متحد عموم آزادیخواهان ایران برای تأمین رفاه و آسایش مردم و آغاز اصلاحات اساسی سر تا سر کشور قدم‌های برجسته‌ای را علی‌رغم هر گونه دسیسه و ارتجاعی در نهایت قدرت برخواهند داشت. با پخش این مژده مسرت بخش یقین است که امشب عموم آزادیخواهان ایران جشن خواهند گرفت و نسبت به شخص جناب آقای قوام سلطنه که با وصف مشکلات گوناگون و تحریکات دائم ارتجاع کشتی مملکتی را با نهایت موفقیت و حسن تدبیر به سوی اصلاحات و سعادت سوق می‌دهند تکریم خواهند کرد. در عین مسرت از این موفقیت بزرگ باید توجه خیرخواهان مملکت و آزادیخواهان کشور را به این نکته جلب نمایم که با ایجاد اتحاد و یگانگی در صفوف کلی آزادیخواهان نیروی عظیم و متحد سربازان آزادی را تشکیل داده و از هر گونه رخنه و نفوذ ارتجاع جلوگیری نماییم تا در سایه این اتحاد و یگانگی و تحت رهبری رئیس دولت موفق به انجام خدمت به مملکت و تأمین و رفاه و آسایش مردم گردیم تا در مقابل تاریخ و نسل معاصر و آینده و خدا و خلق خجل و شرمنده نگردیم. در خاتمه برای عموم هموطنان اعلام می‌دارم که علی‌رغم تبلیغات مسموع عناصر بدخواه ثابت شد که آذربایجان جزو لاینفک ایران بوده و همیشه خواهد بود و حدی قادر نیست فرزندان غیور وطن پرست آذربایجان را از مادر وطن جدا نماید. زنده باد ایران، پاینده باد عموم آزادیخواه.
What was the date of the speech?
این در همون
در ساعت 21:45 روز 23 خرداد
1325. بله. این چیزی بود که از رادیو تبریز گفتم به چیزی.
So what happened? Why didn't this agreement become implemented so that there would be no need for bloodshed?
Well, what went wrong? It was implemented.
But why was there finally bloodshed? And
well, because the Shah started intrigues. That was after I went to Moscow. While I was there, everything was ordered. I nominated the Governor General. I nominated all the heads of departments. And the military governor, the military commander, everything. We made it exactly under the 1906 Constitution, the Anjom Ayolati or Velayati, as they call it in Israel.
Do you think on the other side, Peshawari had goodwill and intention to implement this?
The question, you see, the question of Azerbaijan, as the incident I told you with the consul, you see, it was no longer a question of Peshawari, it was a question of international relations.
Yes.
What does that mean? Obviously, Peshawari would prefer to be the prime minister sitting there. That's what I mean. But it was the proof was when I wanted to leave, and the Soviet consul came and said, "Oh no, that this was the agreement made that they should sign and so on." And he came. It shows that it was the international aspects of these things. That if there's a good policy, there can be no difficulty with the people who profess this ideology. There must be a good international policy. You understand what I mean?
Yes.
There must be a good international policy that everybody. And that was after these events that they accused me of being communist. All right, if to get the Russian troops out of Iran, all the negotiations were done by me in person. If to raise the question of Azerbaijan from independence, bringing back into the nationalist camp, if that is to be is communist, all right, I'm communist. I have the honor to be a communist.
Do you believe that this plan, the implementation of this plan, was practical, and that if the policies that you and Qawam Sultan pursued were continued, then there would have been no need for...
Well, if the policy which I proposed, I always wanted, if at that time, at that moment, we could have, one of the reasons a republic was being proclaimed in Iran. And so we kicked out the Shah. At that time, the whole course of history would have been changed. You understand what I mean?
Yes. The question of republic was discussed when?
I beg your pardon?
When was the question of republic discussed? I didn't follow it.
No, I say if we had done that, if we had the possibility to do anything, we could have done everything we wanted. You see, there was no question. But I didn't want to, from my point of view, push Qawam too far, because Qawam would go to a certain limit. You understand what I mean? To a certain limit. He put the Shah in his place. He brought me without even consulting, without even talking, so I didn't know. When he saw me, suddenly, he saw me there. You see? And I told the Shah, I said, but as long as I'm in the government, you will reign and you will not rule. I said, this is a fundamental conception we have of the constitution and of the government of Iran.
I think you weren't one of his favorites.
I beg your pardon?
I don't think you were one of the Shah's favorites.
But I think he made a great mistake because, I had nothing. Well, of course, I didn't like him. I didn't like his family. I was against his father. I was against everybody, all the whole family. They were usurpateurs, we call them. They usurped this place. They'd been brought by foreign bandits. But when in front of a de facto situation, national considerations, in my opinion, should be above personal friendship or enmity or personal considerations, you see. And this was a person who had no personality. He could only be a valet. And a valet who wanted to be freed to rob himself with a certain, as the French say, association de malfaiteurs, you see. Certain number of people around him. And the rest to send all the wealth of the country out in the purchase of armaments. Nobody can even understand what they're so sophisticated, how to manipulate. You understand what I mean?
Yes.
I mean, think of what schools, what universities, what reforms, agricultural reforms, what could have been done with all this wealth in Iran if it had been done for the people. And it's the only way to keep these countries like Iran, these people, from slipping away into the other. And that's what we cannot explain. And don't understand how nobody can arrive to explain to the Americans.
What were the circumstances for the end of that coalition cabinet and the departure of yourself from the cabinet in October 1946?
Well, at first I didn't accept to go to Moscow. I wanted to continue with the Democratic Party organization.
Why was the cabinet disbanded?
Well, it was the pressure from everywhere almost, from the English, from the Americans, from the even the certain Tudeh people, all these people, everywhere was against. Nobody was in favor of 100% nationalist policies. My belief was, and today it's more than ever justified.
Well, the Americans have written that they were afraid that the cabinet was coming under the control of the Tudeh, and the three Tudeh cabinet ministers were packing their ministries with Tudeh partisans, and therefore that's why they were against this coalition cabinet.
Yes. The reason was the Americans, as I said, they were always very badly informed. The policy which Qawam was pursuing, without we were pursuing. That the policy everybody knows. Well, I was in my hands. I was doing all the discussions, all the policies with all these people. And the Russians, in spite of the fact that I was on their blacklist, in spite of the fact that in my newspaper, 3 days out of every 6 days was printed, the leading article was an attack on the Tudeh, signed Fیروز. These are the documents. You've seen that, all right. In spite of all that, you see, I got into the Qawam cabinet, all right, and we brought about what you see, the reforms we made. In a very short time, we succeeded where others failed. We arranged the question of Azerbaijan where the others couldn't have done. The Russians would not have gone. They would have stayed 14, 15. Perhaps they would have gone further south. But on several occasions, I know, even when I was appointed afterwards, I went to Moscow. Even when I was there, on several occasions, the proposal of a division of Iran into two spheres has been proposed to the Russians. And quite recently again, about 2 years ago, they proposed, you see. Every time the Russians have said no. For the simple reason that it's obviously difficult for a communist government to come and sign, as the Tsarist government did. At the same time, a document of protectorate over a country of its spheres of influence and so on, and pretending to be socialist, communist, and respecting the independence and integrity of people. It's possible to conceive that. But if they even wanted it under those conditions, it would have been possible for them. You see, for instance, the question of Azerbaijan, they've retired their troops, but the Azerbaijan people were there. To not let the Azerbaijan affair be settled, that would have been sufficient for the proclamation of the southern independence, you see. It was with the arrangement of the question of Azerbaijan, and that they followed this line, which I pursued, you see. And they saw, and that's where I spoke very strongly with them, that they respect people who don't hide the truth from them. They have a big respect, and they do respect people. They see they're defending them. And especially when they saw that this person who George Allen pretended was a communist and sent a report to the State Department saying he was a communist on the Shah's council, because it was against me, the Shah.
The Shah had told George Allen that he was communist. Yes.
And what was the put this on, I don't want this to be.
There is a controversy regarding this coalition cabinet, the end of this cabinet. There's one group that says that Qawam thought that the usefulness of the two members in the cabinet was over, and therefore voluntarily disbanded this cabinet. There's another view saying that the Shah had finally succeeded in persuading George Allen to back him up and support him, and by using threats, forced Qawam Sultanate to disband his coalition cabinet, to discharge 6 of its members and bring in new members who were more favorable to the Shah. Which of these two do you think are closer to the truth?
I think there was a bit of a certain amount of truth in the fact that the intrigues were made against the government, which even went to the extent of telegrams that who and who should not be in the government. You see?
Telegrams from
Qashqai and these people, they sent from thing on American instructions. That's quite true. I knew that. And Qawam Sultanate wanted to sort of keep everybody, you know. He wanted to keep a sort of a balance, everybody. And unfortunately, when he one day went to show the Shah, and he said that I've seen just going to the Shah and I resigned. He said,
that surprised you?
He hadn't told me before. He said, I've resigned. He said, I've resigned. As you resigned, yes. And he put like a child, you know, he put his hand in his pocket. He said, but I've got another order to form the new cabinet.
Nice.
Laughing. He said, I wanted to ask you something. I said, he said, but what have you done to these Americans? I said, me? To the Americans? Nothing at all. Why? I've only put into application your policies. I'm nothing against the Americans. On the contrary, what we have done, that's what the government has done. You have done that through me, by me, on my initiatives, and with me, with the acting, in my opinion, it's not only in our national interest, it's also in the interest of the Americans. To have the Azerbaijan free, to have the Russians no longer in the country. Perhaps they wanted them to stay. The British did want them to stay. But the Americans were sort of, it appeared in any way, Truman pretended that they wanted them to go. But otherwise, I've done nothing. What have I done? I've done what was my duty to my country. If the Americans want a member of the government to carry out their caprices, and what they say. Well, I would never accept to become a member of such a government. I thought that we're not here working for foreign interests. We must keep and show that we are capable and have sufficient dignity to keep our own independence. Nobody's going to grant us independence. We have to take this independence. We have to achieve it. But in keeping our situation, it's such that we have to keep the very good relations with the two powers. And that's what our objective is. If the American wants domination, well, that epoch is finished. That epoch took about. If they want legitimate interests, friendship, well, of course, nothing better.
So then how did he tell you that who is going out of the cabinet?
And then he said, I want to ask you something. He said, I want to ask you something. I want to ask you to invite George Allen. Have a dinner with him. Invite him to dinner. Personal dinner. Because I don't know what you've done to these people. Of course you've done what I've said, but they're full. You see? I said, well, they can be full or empty. So I haven't neither made it full nor empty. We've put through a policy which has been successful. If Iranian success in preserving its national independence runs counter to their interests, you see, then I'm sorry, I can have been no further use. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I don't see what we've done. But why do you want me to invite him for dinner? He said, well, if you invite him to dinner, be nice with him, talk to him, you know how to talk to these people and so on. I said, well, I was talking nice to him in a friendly way. And anyway, but I don't know what they've got against me. In other words, you're asking me to invite George Allen to a friendly dinner, so that should be a visa for me to be in the government? Mm-hmm. I will never do that. That I can never do. We like me very much. He liked me very much, and extremely. Don't ask me. That's something I can't do. Because not only I won't go, it's contrary to their own interests. One day they may wake up, but it'll be too late. Mm-hmm. You see, I said, we said, well, look here, would you go to, what will you do then? I said, I'll continue to organize the Democratic Party. He said, oh, that's also difficult. He didn't want the party to be, organize only the party and have the party in hand, you see. Mm-hmm. Well, any government that came, I would have pushed the party to put the application in the policies of the party. He said, well, that's also difficult. No, it makes difficult work for me, and so on. He was rather... He said, well, look here, for 3 months, 4 months, go on a foreign mission as ambassador, if you like, to Moscow, somewhere. After 4 months, I promise you to call you back. We'll have to have elections. There want to be elections. If you want to be elected, we'll be candidate and have you elected and so on. I said, no, I don't want to go to... well, he said, think about it. Tomorrow we'll talk over it again. I went home, and the next day I again saw Qawam. And Qawam showed me a list. He said, these are the people I want to bring into the cabinet. There were some extraordinary names in it, and so on. I said, who the hell are these people? I said, do you know you have a party? He said, yes. I said, well, what are the members of this party? There must be some. Finally, I made a condition with him. I said, look here, I'll accept. He said, for 3-4 months you go there. Because I want to be, if I can be of service to your policy anywhere there, I'll do it. But I have one condition. Some of these members of the government must not be in. I said, who? Well, I proposed 3 ministries. There was the Ministry of Labour as well, and the Ministry of Communications, and the Ministry of Justice. Minister of Justice. The Minister of Justice, I proposed a man who was called Mousavi-Zadeh. He was the judge. When Reza Khan left and the Shah was reigning, because he'd assassinated my father, as you know, I pursued the police. The Shah was reigning. And the Shah said to me, "Oh, look here, do this, anything you want. Try to buy me, do this." And I said, "Look here, this is not a question of, it's a question of conscience. It's not, there's no price which is possible to take this place. It doesn't exist. It's Iranian history. Your father can be bad, and you can be good. You can be good, your son can be bad." I said, if you tell him in my behalf, tell the Shah that if he wants to be a good Shah, he can't be a good son. It's exactly what I said the message to him. You see. I'm sorry, I can't do it, but I just my advice. And if you don't want to be a good son and continue in the same line, well, you can't and you won't remain a Shah. And I continued that. It was the biggest. I don't know. You went there. Perhaps, of course, you heard about it. If you heard about the history of it, there was the biggest against the active accusation against all these people. I had them all arrested, and in the big salons of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, there was the court, because there was no place where 500 people could get there and everything. For a month, really a month, every day in this court I was there. And it was the whole history of the Reza Khan, how he came, all his crimes, the politics that brought him, all. And I opened the whole door for everybody. And people came in, they were shouting, they were cheering and so on. You see, in this, and Mousavi-Zadeh, I never met this man, was the judge, presiding judge. I'd never seen him in my life. And I know the Shah was spending lots of money. He brought for Mukhtari the best good attorneys. Dr. Aghayan was there, got a good sum to defend him and so on. And he was trying to buy the judges. I was aware of that. The only implement I had was to carry out campaign the press campaign, you see, which I did. My newspaper, I hadn't yet started Radio Bruce at that time. I was writing in the Sitare and other newspapers at that time, but organizing many newspapers. And a big press campaign to show the judge that he can't, be careful, you must keep the road straight, you know. Everybody's watching. Anyway, the whole show ended, and he gave a judgment condemning all these people. And one of the things which is in the short thing of giving him a sort of extenuating circumstances, you see, which made it less, was that it had been done on the orders of what was to become the Reza Kebir. You see, and this is an official document which went to the Court of Cassation, Diwan Ali Tamiz. You see, highest court. It's document.
This Mousavi-Zadeh had been the judge.
Had been the judge. That always impressed me. After that, I became very friendly with him, and I wanted to pay him back the duty he'd done towards his country, the honesty he'd shown. He was very good, and being the very good judge for the Ministry of Justice, you see. And I made the Minister of Justice, Qawam, accept it. I told him the reason. I said, he'd done this, that, again. He did that. He ordered I accept to go to Moscow, yes. But when I was there, they started little intrigues in Azerbaijan when I was ambassador. And
did Qawam want to do this?
Pardon?
Did Qawam want these intrigues to take place?
After I went, it was malgré Qawam, in spite of him. because he was then surrounded by people, all kinds of things. The Shah had got more, he got more into the other people's hands. Yes. When I was there, I didn't allow.
How could this 25, 26-year-old Shah overcome a statesman like Qawam?
Well, he didn't overcome statesman like Qawam. Knew him.
He forced him to...
Qawam knew him very well. Sometimes we were talking. They said, "When we can get rid of this shit, if you can do it quickly." Several times he was talking plainly. His impression he knew, but he was an old politician, you see, and he was always seeing on the foreign policy questions where the possibilities.
But it seems that after your departure, the game was lost. I mean, according to history, because from then on...
For Qawam, it was lost. He told me himself. Yeah. He told me himself.
Why did he allow
when he came here? When he came himself, because he had nobody. Well, I was doing the whole damn work for him.
What if he had refused to disband his cabinet?
If he'd done that, it'd be much better.
Why didn't he do it?
Well, that's the reason. He liked power. There's no doubt about the fact that even I tell you, some people came along sometimes, and he was a man of what we call in Persian, hojb haya. So respect friends and so on. They used to come along and ask favors, this, that, and the other. And I didn't want Qawam's name while I was there. I was vice prime minister. My room was just behind his room. See, to be sort of a badly reputed people coming and going. And I put the name of preserving Qawam. There was a amniya, well guarded, but I had a special person there. That certain people who I knew who wanted to come along and profit from Qawam's hojb haya, as we call it, and get certain favors which would have been bad for Qawam's personal reputation, I wouldn't let them go. When he came there, I didn't let them go into personally. They said, "No time now." And Qawam understood that. He said, "You're just allowing certain people to come here." So I said, if I've done something that I've told you, it's quite true, but it's in your interests." When he thought, he said, "Perhaps you're right." As I was afraid you might sometime accept something, to do something for somebody, which afterwards you yourself would probably regret. And
but I still can't understand what are the pressures that were on this old statesman that made him give up, let his friends go.
Well, he liked me very much.
Why didn't he say no? I'm going to keep my cabinet. I'm going to keep these people. And what could have happened? I mean, he had a political party.
We had a political party. We had.
He had the power.
He had the power, but then it would have become a sort of a duel between the Shah and Qawam. If I'd been there, I would have promised Qawam within 24 hours. I would have finished the whole damn thing. It's a question of being a man of action, or one is or one isn't. And some of the crises in the country of once wants to think about doing this, that, and the other, well, everything disappears. There are certain moments in history where one is obliged to take decisions which are vital importance, and it's there where there's no concession is possible. Qawam was always a man of concession, where, in my opinion, certain things concessions should not have been made. Well, he's lost it up till 3 years ago. The same person. You understand what I mean? He was a cancer in the body politic of Iran, the Shah. You see, till the moment he died. And now they're talking all this rubbish about his son. Which of course, you talk, and they don't seem. Nobody seems. These people don't seem to understand. And the people who hear, they've opened shop. These people are certain sort of opposition here. They talk and talk and talk. They're talking now for 2 years. Then 20 days we're in Tehran. You see, they've opened the shop. They're getting money from here, there, and everywhere. They open the shop, and then now there's no possibility of them going because they're not prepared to take risks. They've got too much money now to take risks. That's what I mean. It is something incredible. I know that because the people are not leaving me alone. They're coming night and day from Iran, here, there, everywhere. Where are you? Why don't you come? There's only one person who can come along and arrange the country, not let this thing. I said, well, there must be possibilities, there must be certain things. I don't discourage them, they're all there, but people who've been collaborating with all these people, certain so-called oppositions here, they're disgusted. I've never met them in my life. Civil, military, all kinds of people, every type of people. You understand? Well, the question is, there must be certain, practically possible, there must be certain on the international question. I was waiting to see what the region was going to do. You see, but I'm only hearing he's talking about muscles. We have muscles, whatever it knows, but the other side has more muscles than you, in the region especially. What muscles? It's not a question of muscles, it's a question of policy is based on discretion, on meditation, on the situation. That's the whole trouble.
Can we go back to when you left Tehran for Moscow?
Excuse me.
And you were in Moscow, and things were happening in Tehran.
Well, as I said, then when things started to happen, well, I stopped it all. Because they came there, some of them were running away from Azerbaijan, some of the people who had been there, stayed there, running away with arms and so on. I went and saw Molotov. At the telephone, I went to saw Molotov. I made a prayer. I said, what is going on in Azerbaijan again? I said, are you going back or making some certain agreements or something with the British about the division of Iran?
So the Russians were going in?
No. They wanted to provoke the Russians to come in.
I see.
The plan was to make trouble, provoke the Russians to come.
I see.
That was the plan. You understand what I mean? Because if they had come, the others wouldn't have been waited 1 minute. They were there. You see? They wouldn't have come to Basra and like it. They wouldn't have waited 1 minute, you see. If the Russians come, they would have come. The affair would have been finished, you see. I saw Molotov. I said, what are you doing? I said, some of them are running away with the arms. The arms belong to the government. He gave immediate orders to stop all these people at the frontier and take every bit of arms they've got. I sent a telegram to Qawam. I said, all these arms will be given back to your representatives.
I see, the Peshawari people were taking arms.
They were taking arms and running away, wanting to go to Russia. You see, sort of the frontier. They
were coming over
they wanted to cross on the border, and then to see if they could do something there. You know, and then they could say there may be many of the other agents of people, amongst these people, you see, there were arms on the Iranian territory. They would say they're in Iranian territory, the Russians have come in. It was a plan to get the Russians into the thing. I went and spoke to Molotov without any instructions from the government.
But didn't you wonder what's happening to your old friend Qawam? Why is he allowing these?
No, I knew. That's why I resigned. That's finally why I resigned, and Qawam. Anyway, he knew himself after I'd gone. He told me when he was here. After he came to France, he was here. He said that the day you left me, I was lost. He told me. Because the sincerity must exist, you see. Qawam meant well, you see. But he wasn't always prepared to use all those means necessary for arriving at the objective. Well, you can't hesitate if you have an important objective to achieve.
Is it true that sometimes he would istikhara?
He believed in it sometimes, yes.
I mean, I was told by one person that he gave a question and he said he was going to
make istikhara. But when he didn't want to do something, or it depended on his own. He said if he didn't want to do it, he could say he believed it. Istikhara kalam badamat. He wouldn't accept the responsibility himself. The istikhara did that.
And then the next year, his cabinet resigned and left him alone, and the Majlis gave him a vote of no confidence.
Yes.
And they wouldn't even give him a diplomatic passport to leave Iran.
Yes, they left, and he had to come and
an ordinary passport.
Yes. He came. Well, as I said to you, it was all the Shah's enmity, of course, and.
I mean, how could within 1 year be such a great change?
Well, it depends on
Janab Ashraf to become someone without a passport.
Janab Ashraf, you know, finally the Shah gave because when he came even after Janab Ayqa put here. That was before, but on the radio, talking all over Iran, I had given instructions to say Janab Ashraf. The Shah says, here in the radio, Janab Ashraf, all have been eliminated, all the titles. Janab, all right. He thought it was bad. He had obliged, he wrote the order himself, signed, that Janab Ashraf, Janab Ashraf,
so it was after the fact?
Yes, after I had given instructions all over the country. You see, there was Janab Ashraf, they said, which forced him to do that. Yes.
But again, you know, what I'm trying to say is the dramatic difference within 12 months from where Qawam was and where he ended up is really difficult to understand.
Well, it's not really, it's difficult to understand for somebody who's not there, but for me it's not difficult to understand because I know what importance there is in the surroundings one has there. See, when one is, and the fact that, of course, after I left, the Shah's authority became more. I wouldn't allow it, I told him. See? And they had several shots at me, you know, while I was in Iran. They tried to bump me off, you understand what I mean?
Yes.
When I was in Abadan, there was a strike there. And I was walking in the gardens of the governorship there. Suddenly I was talking with somebody, and the bullet passed, and the Hijazi, the Colonel Hijazi, who I had arrested. And
also the other man.
Misbah Fatimi was there as well. The Governor General was there. Of Khuzestan, they were there, standing in the corner there. And when I said, "What the hell is happening?" I said, "What the hell is happening?" There was a jeep there. I said, "Misbah Fatimi," I said, "Hijazi, come quickly." I got into the jeep. I said, "Come in. Let's go out and see what's happening. Who's firing from where?" They were afraid of the things. I said, "Sit down, sit down, sit down." I sit down. Who's firing? What's all this firing coming from? They said, "We don't know what's happening." I said, "We don't know. You're the Governor General. You're the military governor here."
Also, there was a Fateh.
What did you say?
There was a Fateh army policeman or something.
The Fateh was the oil fellow, Mustafa Fateh.
No, but there was another army.
Yes, the
commander of Fort Al-Shah or something.
Oh, perhaps it's another officer. I don't know. But the Farmande of the Khuzestan, who had sent arms, British arms from Basra by Iranian army trucks to the Bakhtiari to be distributed, you see. And we had documents like that he'd done that, and he sent these.
Who were the people who wanted the Shah to gain greater power vis-a-vis the Prime Minister, and why?
All those people who were around the Shah, they were degenerate, interested, peculiarly interested people. They were not for the person of the Shah. They didn't care a damn about him. They just wanted to exploit any and every situation to fill the pockets. That was the only thing.
But they had joined the Democrat Party, and they were members of a party, and Qawam was their leader.
No, but we had all kinds of people in the party. We had to. Certain people came in the party who were not very well reputed either, newspaper people. And so their newspapers, they could write. So somebody came and said, "Oh, you're making a party. What is this? People who are you allowing them?" I said, "Who?" He gave me names. I said, "Look here. We're going to build a wonderful palace. Marble palace." He said, "Yes." I said, "In this marble palace, are you going to build a water closet or not? Or perhaps several water closets?" He said, "Sure." I said, "Well, there are water closets. You can't build a marble palace without having..."
Like the marble palace was full of water closets.
No.
And that's
after I left, I don't know. Because it was at the beginning I left, you know, it was the beginning of the party and so on. But as long as I was there, I wouldn't allow.
Because at the time when Qawam received the vote of no confidence, they even took over the party. His opponents even took over his own party.
Well, I said they allowed infiltration, they got in. But while I was there, no. While I was there, the Democratic Party was at the beginning, of course. It was the beginning of its thing. I kept it very clean, and there was one or two newspaper people who wanted to come in. I knew them very well. They changed their ideas with the question of money, but they were necessary for certain people if who wanted to attack or wanted to use language which wasn't used by most people. You see, they were necessary. They were the water closets, as you imagine. As I told him that, and they all laughed when I told them that.
I've come across a letter written by George Allen to Mr. Jernigan. And he explains the circumstances of this change of cabinet. He says that ever since he came to Iran, the Shah wanted to have Qawam removed. But he would not yield. He would say, "You should reign and not rule, and leave Qawam alone," because he's the strongest man to keep the Russians out. But he says in September, when your government, Qawam's government, and the Qashqai's came to an agreement where Qashqai's agreed to support the Democrat Party, the Shah was upset because he wanted the Qashqai's crushed and their arms taken, and this wasn't done. So he increased his pressure on the Americans. At the same time, George Allen says that he received a report from someone that he had, that the question of the joint air company with the Russians was discussed in the cabinet by General Feirouz, as Minister of Roads, and that everyone in the cabinet meeting, except for Hajir, had agreed with this air agreement. Iraj Eskandari had asked for the question to be postponed so that Iran could denounce its signature in the Chicago agreement, where apparently this agreement was not consistent with that. Then it was claimed, I'll stress claimed or alleged, that you had spoken about this meeting with someone in the Russian embassy. This is the report that... Yes, I know. The first secretary of the Russian embassy had gone to Eskandari's house and had said that why did you oppose this air company? And Eskandari said, I hadn't opposed it, I just asked for postpone. Then Eskandari had gone to Qawam saying Feirouz has reported to the Russians about me. Then the story had reached George Allen, and he says in his letter, which I think you would be interested in seeing,
yes,
and I'll send it to you. He says that this was a golden opportunity I was waiting for, because this now I could get rid of Feirouz and these others from the cabinet, and at the same time end these discussions with the Russians for this air traffic. So he had gone on October 14th, I believe. He had gone to Qawam and had said that we no longer have confidence in your government because you are infiltrated in your cabinet, and you cannot have cabinet discussions without it being reported to the Russians. And Qawam had asked them, now who are you talking about? And George Allen had refused to mention your name. George Allen had waited 2 days or 3 days, and Qawam had done nothing. Then George Allen goes to the Shah and says, I now agree with you that Qawam should either be arrested, exiled, or imprisoned if he does not agree to disband his cabinet. And the Shah had asked Allen, when should I do this? And he had said, right away. Now just a few days before that, Abbas Mas'udi had gone to George Allen in the evening and had said, we want to make a coup d'etat against Qawam, and will you help us? And then of course the Shah had asked Qawam to come in. There were rumors that General Amir Ahmadi had contacted Qawam and said that he may have to act on behalf of the Shah if he didn't resign. And then Qawam had agreed to propose a new cabinet. Now this is something which has not come out in any report in the past. And I'm very interested in the first person who was actually there who I can ask this question.
The only question, this question about the agreement of the others, the first time I'm hearing this from you, this question about the question of the Iraj. The only thing I can tell you is that Iraj Eskandari was amongst those people who were afterwards suspected of having been working for British interests in Iran, amongst the two them. You understand what I mean? So if it was a prefabricated arrangement that there should be this question that Iraj Eskandari should ask for time and so on, and then they go and come along, and then Iraj Eskandari go and say that this report has been given to the question. There was no interest for us. The question of very minor interest. This question of the thing. The question of the air traffic. Question of very, very insignificant. The reports. If we wanted to give reports to the Soviet embassy, they should give the reports to the Soviet embassy that it was through me that I got the Russians out. It was through me they knew better than anybody. You understand what I mean? I mean, these things were so insignificant. They only become...
But what's of interest...
But it's the first time I hear about it.
What's of interest is the very active role that George Allen...
Against me?
...took to...
I'll show you the reason. I'll show you... No, I'll show you. Let me show you.